Hello, it's me, your oil change light. That last mechanic took 3 hours. Would you trust him again?
Silence your oil change anxiety at Valvoline Instant Oil Change, where we change your oil in about 15 minutes.
Is your home siding making you embarrassed? It's time for a home makeover with new siding from Thompson Creek. Thompson Creek Siding will boost your home's curb appeal with unlimited design possibilities, styles, and colors. Thompson Creek offers high-quality vinyl options and James Hardie Fiber Cement, the #1 siding brand in America, to help you create the perfect look for your home. Act now and Thompson Creek will install your entire siding project without installation costs. Schedule an in-home or virtual consultation today at thompsoncreek.com.
Welcome to this week's Harness Racing Alumni Show. I'm Freddie Hudson, and I'm here today with Trade Martin, Bob Marks, and Andy Cohen. The Harness Racing Alumni Show is the #1 harness racing podcast in North America. We have sponsorships and advertising spots available. For more information, email rrtrotten@outlook.com or visit ustrots.com. The statements and opinions of our guests are their personal opinions and beliefs, and it does not necessarily represent the opinions of the Harness Racing Alumni Show or of its host.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show with your hosts, Freddie Hudson and Trade Martin.
On this week's special broadcast, we have assembled a panel to discuss how, why, and how to protect standardbreds from ending up in the slaughter pipeline. There are roughly about 20,000 horses exported to Mexico and Canada each year for slaughter. Of them, it is estimated that 2,000 to 3,000 are standardbreds, and there is another estimated 1,000 that are rescued. Now, let me introduce you to our panel. First of all, we have Michelle Crawford, the owner of one of our sport's leading breeding farms, the owner of many of our sport's top horses, and a person who has rescued hundreds of horses from kill pens. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Great to have you. Next, we have Ellen Harvey. She grew up in the harness racing sport, her father being one of the sport's greatest conditioners. She is an author, and she personally goes to the Amish communities and educates them on horse care. She also leads the fight to keep the freeze brands on our standardbreds, which can identify them when they are in kill pens. Welcome, Ellen.
Good morning, all.
Also on the panel, we have Dr. Nena Winand. She is a retired veterinarian and former faculty member of Cornell University. She is partners with the Diamond Racing Stable and has rescued several horses from the slaughter pipeline. Welcome, Nena.
Thank you for having me.
Last member of the panel, Monica Bencal. Monica's husband, Bob, was Jeff Garrow's trainer for 50 years before he retired. Monica has been partners in breeding with Jeff and Paula Garrow. She has authored many articles on harness racing. She is strongly opposed to horses being exported to slaughter. And the last horse that they owned was placed with the Standardbred Retirement Foundation and was then adopted out by the New York City Police Department, and you can still find this horse on the streets of New York City. Welcome, Monica.
Oh, thank you for having me, Freddie.
Okay. Now, Michelle, you're first. Why do you think our horses are finding themselves in the slaughter pipeline, and what is your solution to end it?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. I wish I had a solution to end it, or we wouldn't be talking about it. I really think that it relies on our industry to do our best jobs from the get-go, as breeders, to the sales companies, to transferring ownership at any point, and we just don't have a system. It's very flawed. You know, you can sit here and talk about this all you want, but it starts with the USTA and it ends with the USTA, and the governing bodies and the states are all different, and they're different. You know, they're regulated differently. So, you know, we now we're fighting for the freeze brands to come back. I believe wholeheartedly that that's how most of these animals are identified. The kill pens aren't going to go find their gun and, you know, figure out if a microchip can be read. You know, many of them don't have them. They are not easily accessible. I mean, how they get there is one thing, and then what happens to them when they're there, you know, is a totally different topic. So, is somebody who's on the front line of getting the call every single time there's one to be saved or an aged mare or something. I just get so frustrated, and at the same time, it falls on our industry. They all have a voice. They all can, show up at the change for the rule changes, because obviously they all have to be changed by the governing body, and nobody shows up, and nobody, everyone just keeps automatically voting these people in that aren't caring enough about our horses, to make sure they have a safe landing.
Okay. Ellen, the same question to you. Why do you think our horses are finding themselves in the slaughter pipeline, and what ideas do you have for a solution to end it?
Well, I share Michelle's sentiment that this is a massive issue with a lot of moving parts. I would say that it is, at the heart of it all, it's driven by capitalism. It's driven by the fact that people in other countries eat our horses. And there's money to be made, and that will always drive the system. And unless and until that ever changes, the slaughter pipeline will always exist because there's money to be made. There's lots of small things that we can do, like a great big dashboard to adjust things to probably improve things 2 or 3% each. As Michelle mentioned, certainly being able to identify these horses is about as easy as it gets. They did it for decades and decades, had visible identity. And there are lots of people that aren't the USTA, that aren't in racing, that have nothing to do with standardbreds and making a living from them, that I can identify these horses and specifically want to help them because, of course, they're selectively bred to begin with. Nena can speak to the genetics of this all. They're selectively bred to be an athlete. They're virtually all broken to drive. These are not wild Mustangs or horses from the plains in the West someplace. These are pretty user-friendly horses that can get to be useful, which is, of course, what we intended to breed them for to begin with. We also have a situation where folks in the Amish and Mennonite community are not going to start driving cars, boys and girls. So we had better do what we can to try to, when possible, enable them to be better stewards of these animals. And then there's also the issue of euthanasia. Is expensive. It's hundreds of dollars, and also very difficult sometimes to dispose of the carcass. If you have a dog or a cat in this country that you, for whatever reason, can't care for, there's always the SPCA, and you can surrender them. We don't have that for horses. Okay. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Nena, the same question to you. Why do you think our horses are finding themselves in the slaughter pipeline, and what ideas do you have to end it?
I think that, from my perspective, seeing the horses that are coming into the slaughter pipeline, or the kill pens as they're called, most of those horses are coming from a second owner after their careers on the track. Certainly some of them go directly from the track to the slaughter auctions. I think it's a minority, luckily, but we have to grapple with the issue of second careers after the track. It's a huge issue. And understand the Amish use pipeline, which Ellen spoke so eloquently about, and she's done a lot to try to interface with that community, and I think that's really important. I have a lot of Amish friends. I grew up in central Pennsylvania, so in Amish country, and many of them are good horsemen, no question about it. Some of them are absolutely top horsemen, but that is, a segment of the community, and some of them didn't grow up handling horses quite as much, and they aren't educated on horse handling and good care standards and things like that. And Ellen's set up several programs to address that, and I think those efforts are really very, very necessary. What else can I add? Euthanasia is a huge issue, and I had to euthanize. I have a number of rescue horses at my place usually. Right now I only have one, but I had to euthanize 3 horses last year, and the average cost was close to $2,000 a horse to euthanize and dispose of the horse. It is very not affordable for a lot of people, and that's something that needs to be grappled with.
Okay. Monica, the same question to you. Why do you think our horses are finding themselves in the slaughter pipeline, and what type of ideas do you have to end it?
Well, let me first say that I agree with everything that's been said before I have this chance to speak. So, but having said that, I really believe that we have supposed leaders in this industry that honestly do not care about whether or not a horse it goes to slaughter. If they did, I think that they would do a little bit more, to help this situation. Remember, all of these horses, all standardbreds, are only bred today to make people money, to make human beings money. So, like Ellen said, this is capitalism, But I think once you bring a horse into this world, you really have responsibility, whether you are the first owner or the second owner or the third owner, to make sure that that horse stays safe. They just depend on us. They're like dogs. So I really believe it starts with our leadership. And since I know everybody, this may sound like USTA bashing, but they are the only regulatory body that governs the USTA other than the states. So it is their responsibility. And I find it abhorrent that they really abdicate this. And I think the reason for a lot of that is because they really are serving two masters, some of these directors and other people. They are serving their own interests, and then they are supposed to be serving the interests of the harness racing community. So I think a lot of them have put their own interests ahead of the industry when they really shouldn't. If they have a position in the USTA and they are in a leadership role, they should look to what is best for the industry, not as what is best for their own pocketbook. From my little experience, there is a lot of money to be made in breeding horses and selling horses, and I've been lucky enough to have a little bit of that, but it really comes with responsibility. And until the USTA and its leadership recognizes that fact and goes ahead and doesn't do programs that are only window dressing. And by that, I mean, if you go to their page under Life After Racing and read the description under Full Circle, and I'm not bashing the program because I think it could be a wonderful program, but the disclaimer that they have attached about their responsibility and is ridiculous. It's like we have nothing to do with this. And I really think that's abhorrent. I really do. I hate to keep using that word, but that's the one that pops to my mind. I do think there are several things that they can do. I think every segment of our industry, and that includes breeders, large and small, like myself, which it includes racetrack, sales companies. I've been charged fees to sell a horse. I know what they make. They make a lot of money. And as far as I know, I can't see where there's a representative from that industry supporting the cause. Maybe I'm wrong, but owners, trainers, every single one of us, big and small in the industry, needs to step up. And we need to there is no one program that's going to fix this. There's going to have to be a coalition of people and programs, and everybody can have their place to help save our standardbreds, I think. I think one good thing that Freddie and I were bouncing around would be if you go to the USTA site now, you will find that I currently own 0 horses. If you go to the USTA site, you will find that is not true. Something needs to be done, and Freddie and I were talking about maybe charging a fee so that records like that get updated. And those fees could be specifically earmarked to save the standardbreds. So if I've sold a horse it needs to be reflected. If a horse dies, it needs to be reflected. And if the owner doesn't want to, do that, take the responsibility to do that, they should be charged for that. And that money can be earmarked to go to, the care of the standardbreds after they're done racing. But there's other things that can be done, and I'm sure the ladies before me have plenty of ideas about that. All right. But that's about it for me, Fred.
Okay, Ellen, you're next on the hot seat here. Some people say that we should not rescue horses from the kill buyers. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I certainly understand and appreciate that the wrong people are getting rich in the current economic model. And there are predecessors before us that have adopted a different model. The Morgans and the Saddlebreds both have multiple programs that make connections directly with people in the community, and heavily they are Amish and Mennonite, but it could be anybody, to intercept those horses at the point at which they're no longer serving a function for the folks that have them, and before they get into the slaughter pipeline. And I would also say that, like Nena, I have met many, many outstanding Amish horsemen that I would not hesitate in a moment to give them a horse to care for or to learn from them. But they can't punch a few questions into their phone and find out, how can I place a horse for adoption? What other options are there other than auctions? Everybody in an Amish family in those communities work. It is a valued part of their culture, and that is how they live their lives. Animals serve a function or they're not there anymore. And they, many of them, and it happens to me every 3 weeks, I hear of somebody in that situation that would like to bypass the auction, but they don't have the ability to feed this horse indefinitely. They don't have a truck and trailer to load them up and get them someplace. And a lot of the adoption and rescue groups are responding to the hair on fire. This horse is going to go going to go down the wrong path if we don't raise a whole bunch of money that we give to a bad guy, who's getting rich off of all of us. So there are alternatives to it. I would certainly love to see groups like the Standardbred Transition Alliance, for instance, and there are others, incentivize programs that certainly they emphasize adopting horses directly from the track. Well, that's a great idea in theory. There's an awful lot of people that want to try to get another $400 or $500 or $600 out of that horse before I send them down the road, because perhaps they've already lost money on them. And to soften that financial blow a bit, if I've got a chance to make a few $100 on them, or even $1,000 or $2,000 for some of the younger horses that don't have so many miles on the tires, they're going to do that. They're not going to give them to an adoption or a rescue group. But certainly groups like the STA and others can say, if you develop an economic model for some of your horses at least, where you bypass those middle guys that we are buying fancy trucks and trailers and making them rich, we will incentivize you to do that. So that's one possible solution.
Okay. So, Nena, the same question to you.
Well, I have purchased horses from slaughter dealers. And if you want to rescue a horse. I can't get too excited about where the horse is coming from, because it's all across the board. There are kill pen buyers. There are people that try to intercept these horses for resale before they get into the low-end auctions. It's a lower-end auction, but not the lowest. And I don't have a problem with that. I understand where the STA is coming from, and I think they could do a lot more than they do to incentivize some of the things that Ellen talked about. Unfortunately, this is a legal commercial industry, selling horses, and that's not going to change. And so anything you can do to offer incentives for people to not get horses into that kind of resale pipeline will help.
Okay. Monica, okay. Finish.
I was just going to add real quickly, Freddie, that any one of us on this call or in the industry or who likes Standardbred, there is no end to low-end auctions where you can go and outbid these guys. It's not that hard. We do that all the time at Harrisburg and Lexington. Raise your hand in the air and buy one. I've done it about 15 times.
Okay. Monica, you're next. People say that we should not rescue horses from the kill buyers. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I absolutely, well, that's a toughie because I don't want to see somebody make a lot of money off of a horse that's in distress. But if it is the only way to get that horse to a safe place, I really think it should be done. I've contributed to those funds and I will continue to. So I think like I said, there are a lot of good alternatives, like you said, that maybe could be instituted so we don't have to do that. But I don't really have a problem with that.
Okay. Michelle, now the same question to you, and I know that you've probably rescued more horses than anyone on the panel here. So what are your thoughts on that horses shouldn't be rescued from the kill buyers?
Well, who's saying that? I guess it depends who's saying that, because obviously they feel that way. Doesn't mean I feel that way, obviously, because, we find a way to do it. I can't attend auctions. So, my life doesn't allow me to just show up and try to outbid for a more normal price. I do my part. And I have a lot of people around me, great people around me, that also do their part. So, I think as an industry, the people who are vested in saving our animals are doing everything they can until the laws change. And obviously the law that needs to change is the exporting, across the border. And all of a sudden the kill buyers won't be rich anymore. So they won't be making, these extortion payment or, getting this extortion from people like me and Monica and everybody who, is just putting, reaching into their pockets all of the time. But, it all starts from the beginning. There are another thing, the more positive twist. I'm not totally beating on the USTA. I think that they are not being diligent in rule changes such as stand for the brand. I think that I have put it out there as much as anybody on social media using very prominent horses, because guess what? They fall into harm's way sometimes too. Owners die. Horses go to another home. They go to a retirement facility. They go bankrupt or they close down, and then they go to an auction, and all of a sudden you have a Hambo winner that is in a bad place. So it has happened. It does happen. I'm realistic to that. But the USDA has also made changes so that they're supporting with aftercare functions. So they are, getting fees for transfers and things like that. So I do applaud them for their efforts. It just needs to be more. And I think that there's just got to be more diligence in how they're looking at the industry as a whole from start to finish. But it does start with breeders. The trainers are doing a fabulous job working with, programs, the MMXX, which Molly D'Agostino, we have that training facility, the retraining facility, that you're taking all of these horses. In the last year plus, I think they've adopted in 132 horses, she told me. She's taken a bunch of my horses, well-bred, not well-bred, but horses that actually need a career path. But the trainers are working with this group, and, they are very diligent about their retraining and bringing them to the World Show. And, I think a lot of people say, oh, we don't need to endorse this. It's too much money. We're not going to support another group that's coming out. But when you look at how many horses they've moved this year with very little funding, these are horses that are coming right off the track, that have purpose, that don't need to go to a retirement home or go to an auction. They'll take them in, they will give them purpose, they will adopt them out. Believe it or not, there are adopters out there. I can't even believe that she said 130 or 100, no, it wasn't 132, it was 173. So that's a lot of horses to retrain. And, they have, just like, I think your SRF, I've always supported SRF. I heavily support STA. I was very involved with getting that off the ground. But I think everyone's intentions are in the right, where they need to be. But I also think that when you start to look at a vehicle for a lot of the horses that don't have issues and aren't sick or aren't broken down, that they do have the ability, and the trainers work with them. You don't need to be a trainer to retrain a horse under saddle. You can be anybody. You can just be a passionate, enthusiastic human being with the right support. They do have they do have their, marketing team and, their show team is important to them. So I am plugging them right now because it is a huge solution that I don't know if anyone knows about, but she's taken the, social media by storm lately. And I've just recently said, oh my God, I'm really taking notice because this is a big deal. This is protecting a lot of horses from the slaughter pipeline and giving them purpose. I mean, I'm sending Homicide Hunter there. He doesn't belong in my retirement paddock. Split the houses with somebody under retraining. He's going to the Standardbred show. Those are famous names because they're Breeders' Crown winners. They're, they have, they're in lights. But there are so many horses that aren't in lights and that you may never have heard of that they're doing the same thing with. So I think we need to really look at the industry as a whole and who is supporting these groups.
Okay. So, Nena, what type of funding ideas do you think should be in place for our retired horses? Something needs to be in place for them. And what are your ideas on that?
Boy, I don't have a ton of ideas on where the funding comes from, but I think a lot of it has to come from segments of the industry that are active. And we've mentioned breeders, of course. We've mentioned the sales companies. We've mentioned USTA. We have to utilize all of those avenues because it does take funding to do this. And I think that programs and MMXX, Michelle just spoke very eloquently about. That's a program that I'm really impressed with. I think one of the things that is often lacking with the rescues is the ability to retrain and restart these horses well and make them marketable. Actually, they're marketable for people that are looking for show horses, even for trail horses, for whatever discipline. Fox hunters is a good example. So programs to do that are going to need funding. And every avenue is going to have to be explored for that.
Okay. Monica, the same question to you, even though I know that you've answered part of this question before.
Right.
What type of funding ideas do you think should be in place?
Well, I do think that every horse I think it's a good thing that the USDA has instituted the $5 transfer fee. I think that's good. But I think that type of fee needs to be attached, I guess, to sales companies. I mean, I don't believe they now contribute for every horse that's sold. Breeders, I don't recall that being on my bill, that I was funding a fee to save the horse maybe down the road. So I think every segment, as I said before, has to come up. Your idea actually, but I agree wholeheartedly. People that sell and transfer horses that have died that are still in the names of old owners, that needs to be corrected, and those fees should be, earmarked. So every segment needs to come up with a plan to fund this initiative of saving the Standardbreds, because I really do believe that we brought them into this world to make us money. We have the responsibility for their life, and that's care for a lifetime. Now, I also believe that horses like Genius was miserable in the 6 months when he was in the paddock, babysitting babies. He's a great ambassador for the New York City Police Department, and he loves his second job. So a lot of these horses are bred to work and want to work, and I agree with Michelle. I think that's great. Jeff, I think, has done the same thing. Horses that are sound, horses that are particularly happy, just roaming around the field, watching babies grow up, are adopted out from Jeff's farm. So, I mean, he usually sends them to a retraining facility, but I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I mean, he lets them rehab, and when they look like they might be able to be useful in a second life, he sends them where they should go. So I think we need to, every segment of the industry does, to be a little bit more succinct, needs to step up and come up with a plan to fund this. And it cannot just be a window dressing thing where no money is given. You say that you support it. A segment says, oh, yes, of course we support Aftercare for horses. But they don't give any money. They don't make a person in charge of the initiative, and they don't keep records of it. So if that's the case, I can say all day long, I support something. But if I don't have to give my time, my energy, or my money, am I really supporting anything? And I think the answer is no. And I think a lot of our leadership is doing this. I think they're paying lip service just to make it look like they're doing something. And if they actually did something, it would benefit the sport greatly, because we have such a black eye that it really hurts our industry when we don't take care of our own.
Okay, now Michelle, over to you now. What type of funding ideas do you think should be in place for our horses in retirement?
Well, first of all, I think breeders should be giving a $5 fee or a $2 fee or a $10 fee with every horse that goes. Maybe that every horse is bred that actually gets registered. I think that it falls on the breeders first, and then I think that there's a sale company could kick in, a percentage, or for every big sale there is. And can you imagine the money that could come out of these sales that could get allocated, even if it's just to the STA, and the STA is governed so that it has legitimate approved facilities. I mean, I know there are a lot of small potatoes out there and people who work their hardest and spend all their money and do all the funding, fundraising that they can. I've worked with many of them, and they can't, they're not necessarily set up to be a 501c3, so they struggle, they're not necessarily on the STA. I pick my spots with where I donate and where, my groups donate to, or where the horses go. But the STA is a good governing body because they are approved. You know that it would be appropriated, and it's transparent. You see where your money goes. The problem is, so if the breeders, and I take Crawford Farms and Diamond Creek, because I've talked to Adam extensively about this over the years. Where does the money go? How do we know how it's spent? And that's the problem. There is just no hierarchy for where, there's no transparency. So I think if you just say, hey, the breeders, in order to register for the sale or any of your yearlings, you have to give a $2 fee or a $5 fee. I certainly am not looking to hurt small breeders. So we come up with what we think is fair as an industry. But everyone's responsible. So if you're breeding a horse and you can afford a stud fee, I'm sure you can, afford a $2 or $5 fee to register that horse, and it goes into a retirement plan for these, the people who are standing behind these programs that are doing all the work in the aftercare. It's not my job right now. I do my part. I have about 70 retirees. I don't ask for funding for that. I do it myself. But, these groups that do this for a living need the funding, and they need the tools.
Okay. Ellen, same question to you. What type of funding ideas do you think should be in place for our horses in retirement?
Well, when I win the megabucks, I'll take care of it all. But in the meantime, I have often said for many, many years that funding can be both pervasive and proportional, meaning that if you are involved in this industry, if you touch it in any way, shape, or form, we are going to assess some sort of responsibility to you. If you have a groom's license, you can kick in $1. Right now, the system that the USGA has in place for helping to fund STA, which is marvelous, by the way, we all want to be giving money to groups that we are certain have been closely scrutinized and are exercising outstanding practices in dealing with horses. So that is a marvelous step in the right direction. And full disclosure, I did the work to write the IRS application for the STA, got the website going, spent the better part of a year getting it going, so I'm not completely unbiased in that regard. But the transfer fee, that's wonderful. Not everybody transfers a horse. We have, hundreds and hundreds of people that have trainers and driver's licenses that don't wheel and deal in horses, so they are somehow immune from this. People that don't have the skills to work on Wall Street or in any other real high-paying career are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, many of them, and perhaps they're privately benefiting these programs, but they don't get touched through this current system. So I'd love to see a system where every transaction, you buy a horse, transfer a horse, it's $5. You change their name, it's $2. You form a stable, it's $2. It is currently not pervasive, nor is it proportional. So that would be a good place to start. The sales companies certainly participating. But I do think that moving the dials in a lot of directions will also shift the burden, making these horses easy to identify through their visible Freeze brand, which is not even the majority of horses being registered get that optional brand, will help people that are not in the industry to bear some of the financial costs of transitioning these horses into a more useful career, which is, of course, why we bred them. These are not dogs and cats that reproduce willy-nilly on the street. They would not exist were it not for our will and our technical ability and our investment in their ability to make money for humans. So I guess that's a short answer, that things like making euthanasia more accessible will keep horses that should never have gone to auction, and even commercial headline names in our sport who send their 19 and 20 and 23-year-old mares that are no longer productive, who could afford to euthanize them at home in a controlled, non-stressed manner, still send them to grade sales to get a few $100 out of them. And I'll say one last word on that subject. The late Leo McNamara, who many of you knew, who before he died was the executive director of the New Jersey Horsemen's Association, and his father and he were both outstanding horsemen and farm managers. I can remember speaking to him on a glorious fall day like we're having today, saying, I got these two 23-year-olds, and they're a little bit ouchy and they're eating okay, but I worry about the winter coming and the ice and them colicking during a blizzard and, not being able to get the vet. He said, I think I'm going to let them go on the next nice day, give them a nice brand mash. Those are tough decisions to make. You have to have a pretty stiff spine and be a real adult to do that sort of thing. But that is the kind of decision-making that we as an industry can support and normalize, and that will be to the benefit of our horses and put responsibility on the people that own them.
Okay, my next question, Monica, I'm going to lead off with you. The United States Trotting Association, along with many of the harness horsemen's associations, racing commissions, and racetracks, are they doing anything to prevent our horses from ending up in kill pens, and what should they be doing?
Oh my gosh, Freddie. If they are doing something, I really have not heard. So I don't believe if they are doing something, I don't believe they're doing enough of something. So no, absolutely not. I don't think that they're doing what they should be doing.
Okay. Michelle, the same question to you.
I guess what I will say is I'm going to just ask them to do more than they're doing. I'm not going to sit here and point a finger at them because they already know how I feel. I think I'm very vocal about it. I always want more. I want responsiveness. I'm asking for better, and I think that's all you can do until somebody steps up and we all get together as a group and make a change.
Okay. And Ellen?
I echo what the other panelists have said, and I would also chime in and say our legislators need to be aware of the fact that they are subsidizing, through a variety of means, an industry that does not uniformly certainly care in any sort of emotional way at the top, although it's not uniform, let's put it that way. There's not a commitment to the lifetime care of these horses, but breeds these horses who end up with terrible means, and our government leaders have effectively subsidized people's ability to do that. I'd love to see the handle, and we say this all the time, but then somebody would have to push back their half of a penny onto the table. We know that every penny of the dollar wagered is allotted to somebody. And if the horses were to get a direct benefit from that, then somebody, the horsemen, the tracks, the state governments, the city governments, schools, et cetera, are going to have to say, okay, here's a quarter of a penny. I'll push it back for the benefit of the horses. good luck making that happen, but that would be a first line of defense as far as I'm concerned. They generated that money. These animals generated that money. They should benefit from some of it.
Absolutely. And Nena, the same question to you.
I don't think I can add a lot to what's been said. The original question was, is USTA doing enough, I believe?
Well, it's the USTA along with the racing associations, racing commissions, and racetracks. I looped them all together because everyone points at the USTA. I agree that
they're just not doing enough, and they need to start to think outside of the box and do more. It's what Michelle said. And you can ask and ask. You can. I have not had much success dealing with directors in New York on some of these issues, and they need to do more. They need to step up.
Okay. And my last question, I'm going to start with Michelle. Are there any aftercare organizations that you recommend, and you can mention more than one?
Well, I think I've already done that. I think MMXX it serves a very big purpose in, preventing them from ending up in a bad place when they're very viable coming off the track. And I think that they've had huge cooperation and support from owners and trainers and, anyone who knows that the horse has life left and doesn't need to go to a retirement. But, I've always supported SRF, and they've always looked out. I mean, it's not an easy job, and these people who go to the kill pens and get all this information and beg people for money, it's good, bad, it's ugly. It's not a glamorous job in, I don't think the goal is to call people out that formally own, because not everyone can help at that point, and events change in people's lives. But STA I would support wholeheartedly, and, I have Penny Parker. Penny Parker cared for a horse that I, loved dearly, and I never even met him. He got to my farm, and I had to euthanize him the next day. And it broke my heart, but it broke her heart too. So there are so many good people out there. I just, obviously there are the ones that are recommended, and then I just don't know about some of the other ones.
Okay. Ellen?
I echo what Michelle has said, and certainly the organizations that are accredited by the STA, there are only 5 of them, but it is a high bar that they have to clear. They're under close scrutiny, and it's quite the badge of honor to be STA accredited. I've had a lot of dealings over the years with a group in far southwestern West Virginia called Heart of Phoenix. My first dealings with them, it's kind of a long story, but they had a standardbred mare whose adopter sold her. They chased after this mare through literally 5 states and finally found her in bad shape, but they were able to rehab her. They took the adopter to court for violating her contract, and they won back every cent that they went after. And it's an all-volunteer organization. They're in a very economically depressed part of the country. They care for mine horses that are abandoned on the mines, which there are standardbreds there. They're only 2.5 hours from Lexington, Kentucky. They're in far southwestern. So they're one that I really admire because they've really scrapped around and used their brains to make a path for horses in a really economically difficult part of the world. And standardbreds are included.
I'm going to just pipe in, too. I'm sorry, it's Michelle again. I don't want to exclude new vocations. I mean, they've been great, and they have served a huge purpose, and they are very, very transparent out there for the industry to see in all of their hard work, so I didn't want to leave them out, both thoroughbreds and standardbreds.
Okay. And Nena?
Boy, a lot of the rescues that I've dealt directly with have already been mentioned, particularly Heart of Phoenix, new vocations, and I would add Sunshine Horses in the Syracuse area. I don't believe they are STA accredited at this point. I could be wrong. I thought they were for a while, but I don't know. That's a rescue that deals heavily in standardbreds. And Vindona Horse Shelter, which is not STA accredited, which is local down here near the Horseheads region. In particular, Liz Ingersoll that runs that rescue. It's a very small rescue, and she takes in horses that have usually are pretty roughed up, have special needs, and need to be quarantined. And she's been great to deal with. She's the one who...
Sunshine Horses is accredited.
Pardon? Sunshine is?
I just checked. Sunshine is accredited, yes.
Great. For some reason, I thought they were not anymore, but that's great to hear. Liz's rescue is not STA accredited, but she's done a great job. She had Lady Magdalene when she came off the road with 2 ankle fractures. So that was a heck of a rehab to do. So I owe her for that. And I think she does a great job with those types of cases.
Okay, and Monica.
Yes, well, in my mind, there is SRF and Purple Haze. Those are the ones. Yeah, those are the 2 that I have dealt with, and I'm going to say I don't understand, and this is not a podcast to get into that, but why SRF is not accredited by the STA, but they do a great job. They took not only Genus at work and made sure he has a wonderful second home. They took in my old Standardbred Fred in Full Stride, which I looked after him for 10 years after he got off the track. He would go to live with somebody. He couldn't live with them anymore. He'd come back to me. I'd adopt him out again with say he would go to another home. That didn't work out. He would come back to me. So finally, when after 10, 11 years, I had run out of people. And I called them up, and they took him in and found him a wonderful home, I think, within 3 months. So I don't think they get enough credit. Always there are issues, but they are a great organization in my mind. Purple Haze, I didn't know much about them, but I was able to help Jeff get Magenta Man in there, and he found a wonderful home. So those are 2 organizations I think deserve some credit.
I'm sorry. It's Michelle again. I just have to say this. I'm so sorry. Purple Haze has been like my go-to, and I totally left them out because my most recent was with MMXX. But Betty Holt and Wanda have literally taken so many of my horses and found them the most amazing homes. So I would be remiss if I didn't just throw that in there. They'd be like, "Thanks a lot, Michelle."
The best. They are the best.
Okay, so we've been recording for 50 minutes. Is there anything anyone else would like to add before I close the show out?
Spend the $40, freeze brand your horse. Make sure that wrong horse doesn't get treated by the vet or get shipped or get compete in a race, as happened at Pocono in July when it was a pacer and a trotting race. So for $40, it's a great insurance policy.
Okay.
I second that. Stand for the brand.
Yes, I agree. The brand needs to stand.
Okay.
Well, my baby this year is branded.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle, Ellen, Nena, and Monica, for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We greatly appreciate it, and hopefully we make some kind of difference.
Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Our pleasure. Okay, now over to Andy for this week's Keeping Pace Weekly Update.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, I'm going to focus my column next Monday on this big report from federal regulators about what happened at the University of Kentucky. Dr. Scott Stanley accused of misconduct. The feds basically shut down the UK lab, saying that the test results weren't accurate. That's a pretty significant story. It has implications for harness racing as well as thoroughbred racing. So that's going to be in the next edition of my Keeping Pace column at Pollock Report. Thanks, Fred. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Andy. The Harness Racing Alumni Show is the #1 harness racing podcast in North America and is listened to worldwide on multiple platforms, including Spreaker, iHeartRadio, USTrots.com, HarnessLink, Google Podcasts, and many others. To our audience, thanks for listening, and please join us again next week.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show